who am I and what am I supposed to be doing here? And what am I supposed to be doing with my time? Houses come and go and money comes and goes, and material possessions are, they're here for a little bit, but they can be fleeting. And the only thing I could come up with that we're absolutely directly intrinsically connected to is time. You can't lose it. You can't give it away. You can't drop it on the floor and break it. It is yours and yours only, and you get to decide how you want to spend it. However, you don't know how much of it you have.
The first person we lead is ourself. Welcome to Because This Matters, a podcast about leading from the inside out. I'm Mark Poise, and in each conversation we explore how values take shape and become action, how people with clarity navigate change, challenge, and growth with intention. My guest today is Will Hensley. To some, Will's life and career sound like an adventure novel spanning different worlds. He spent several years working as a cowboy on a cattle ranch in Texas before building a career in the music industry, eventually becoming a tour manager for performing artists in Nashville, traveling extensively, leading teams, and managing the countless moving pieces behind large-scale touring. Then Will and his family made another major change, taking a risk and uprooting their life in Nashville and moving to western Montana, where he now serves as general manager of the Meadows on Rock Creek, a luxury guest ranch focused on hospitality, outdoor adventure, and meaningful experiences. Across these chapters, some common principles are shared: integrity, respect, self-reliance, and taking care of the people around him. Will is also someone I've always appreciated for his willingness to stay open, genuinely considering other perspectives and even changing his mind when evidence or experience calls for it. Will, welcome to Because This Matters.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
When you think about your work and your life right now, what are the main driving values for you out there in Montana?
I mean, one of the biggest things that has really been a driver is just family, really. We've got a 3-year-old boy, and just really trying to devote my time to being a good dad has probably become the highest priority more than anything. It used to be, I'm lucky to be in a situation that I'm doing something as a career that I really love. And at first, that was maybe the attraction to doing that job is because I loved it. And now it has taken a drastic turn that I didn't really think about before having a son. But the main driver for it now is to be able to give him a good life out here in western Montana, and that's been a big shift, and for the positive, and just also being able to spend time with him. Previous careers I've had have been so demanding as far as just time spent at work, and now I get the opportunity to spend time at home with family, and being a good dad has become, absolute paramount to anything else, really.
I love that you've basically taken on the task of orienting your entire life around how to be a parent in the way that feels most appropriate for the family right now. What have you had to sacrifice to be able to do that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm not saying that this is the most important. I think there's there's several sacrifices, and it's all been things I look back on, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I did leave a previous career and something that I was deeply ingrained in for a really long time, and that was honestly, it was pretty gut wrenching. Mostly because you spend so much time doing something that your identity is so intertwined with whatever that is. At least mine was. I became so wrapped up in that career and what it called of me, that when it came time to think about doing something different, it was like, well, who am I if I'm not doing this anymore? And that was just kind of a startling question, and something that really ate on me at the time. And I think I just had to really use my sense of intuition and just kind of go with my gut on what felt right and not necessarily give in to like the thought of things. It was more of there's an inner knowing there, and you can listen to it or you can listen to conditioned thought. And I chose to go with the gut, and that was a really good move.
What was your gut asking of you in that moment? Was it really super clear as far as how it would play out, or was it more abstract?
It was pretty abstract. I mean, what I was, my the situation I was in was an interesting one in that I was leaving a dream job to go pursue another one. And that was hard. The job I was pursuing, which was to build a guest ranch in Western Montana, that's a lifelong dream I've had since I was a kid. I've always wanted to do this. And you would think that the opportunity to do that would be an easy one. And in a sense, it was a no brainer. And then, on the other side of the coin, I'm also leaving a lot of really good things to go and do this. And I was very comfortable in the position I was in. I've been doing it for quite a while, and I had a good grasp on how to be successful in that arena. And so there was a level of comfort there, and that felt good. I've got this. I know how to do this. And then to think about leaving that to go do something I have never done this before. And we're going to move to the middle of nowhere, Montana, and run what is ultimately a boutique resort. That was a really foreign thing. So yeah, it was a scary thing. A couple of the other things that I was leaving was my mom and dad. I was leaving some family and all my friends, and in thinking about that really made me realize how I was totally surrounded by some of the most amazing people. And it really all of a sudden made me really cherish some of those relationships that you may not think a whole lot about because they're your buddy and they live right down the road, or they're within reach. But when you think about kind of vacating the premises and leaving those folks, a few thousand miles away, all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually they're really valuable to my life. They bring a lot to the table for me. And so that was another one that was really tricky. And everybody that really knows me knows that this is something I've always been passionate about, the outdoors, and how much I would love giving these kinds of experiences to other people, showing people the things that I love to do, which is ultimately what this place is. I get to take people around and give them an experience of things that I really am passionate about. And what an honor and a pleasure it is to do that. But it did come at some, I don't know, I wouldn't say an expense, but there were some sacrifices at the time. And I can honestly say I'd do it all over again the exact same way. I wouldn't change a thing, but it was tough at first.
There's a theme that's been pulled apart on this podcast already with some other guests about the relationship between clarity and uncertainty, and how strangely they can kind of coexist sometimes. And I know that this endeavor, the Meadows at Rock Creek, is something that it didn't exist in some grand way that you stepped into it. You were part of the process of building this, right?
Yeah, I was able to, I was given the opportunity. I think it's important to highlight that term. I didn't go off and do this by myself. I had ultimately a family that believed in me to help make this thing come to fruition, and they allowed it to be. And without them, it wouldn't exist. But yeah, I've been here from concept to creation, and it's been such an awesome experience. There's a lot of things that come up to have somebody believe in you. That's awesome. What an amazing thing that is, that really shouldn't be overlooked. But then to get in there and at first be clear on what your intentions are. I think that's the clarity part of it, but also be uncertain on just exactly how this is going to unfold. Unfortunately, we don't all have a crystal ball that we can look into and peer into the future and get an idea of how to proceed right there in that moment. So yeah, those two things really kind of do play off of each other. But again, just digging down deep and going with your gut and aligning yourself with something that you truly desire, not a frivolous want like a car or something like that, but something that is going to really provide meaning or fulfillment in your life. When you can align yourself with those things, The power of belief followed by right action is really good playbook to follow.
What determines right action in your experience?
Well, the power of belief, I think, is kind of step one. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, either way you're right. And I remember the first time I read that and just stuck in my mind forever. Like, well, the ball's in my court, and if you think you can, you can. If you wanted to go off and be an astronaut, well, you can do that. A lot of people do. It may seem like an insurmountable hurdle for some, but um, really believing that you can, I think, is the first step. And then right action is just kind of a combination of going with your gut and then implementing that into the physical world. And I think it might start something so simple as writing your goals down on a sheet of paper. I think that's the first step in right action. And then figuring out what the first step is and continuing on down the line. And in my case, there were some things that seemed like my goal was too ambitious, and well, this is not going to come together because X, Y, or Z, or the expense is too much, and I don't have that kind of money, or whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of a doubt that will really try to creep in no matter what you're doing, and I think really listening to your gut, and if your gut says you should keep going, then you keep going. And I think there's some sort of function of the universe that allows it to be. And I've had some examples of that come into my life, and now I I don't really sweat the small stuff like I used to. I think just there's a bit of comfort knowing that everything comes to us in divine time, and just not try to have so much control over every last little action in your life, but just kind of let things happen. And a lot of a lot of times they'll fall into place as you'd want it, or even better than you could have dreamt it up. So,
You've alluded to trust and intuition a couple times now. Would you be able to tell people how your sensitivity to that and how your relationship with that has evolved, maybe where it started and how it grew up to being so central now?
well, I think that really was maybe inspired by the concept of like time. And I think time was maybe the first thing, basically reevaluating or redoing my concept of time. And I'm not saying that this viewpoint is right or wrong, but I really had some questions. I was at one point somewhere in my mid 20s, just kind of in a state of anxiety and having a hard time trying to figure out what my purpose was. Who am I, and what am I supposed to be doing here, and what am I supposed to be doing with my time? And then after some thought, it occurred to me that time is the only thing that we really have. There's an argument that we own a house and a car and those kinds of things, but I think they're transitory. I think that, houses come and go and money comes and goes, and material possessions are, they're here for a little bit, but they can be fleeting. And the only thing I could come up with that we're absolutely directly intrinsically connected to is time. You can't lose it. You can't give it away. You can't drop it on the floor and break it. It is yours and yours only, and you get to decide how you want to spend it. However, you don't know how much of it you have. And that was the startling thing was, wow, the only thing I really have is time, but I don't know how much of it I have. What a bizarre thought. And
It's a
so
real
all of a
pickle.
sudden,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it really hit home. It really sank in. And all of a sudden, my time became very important. And how I spend that time should be done in a way that makes me feel fulfilled or serves me and my family, or whatever that, or helping other people, serving other people. I get a lot of fulfillment out of that too. And So yeah, the concept of time was a really important one, and that I think that was the catalyst of trying to figure out what was important in life. And then in that, you've really kind of got to draw a line in the sand of, well, I'd like to make a bunch of money. So, should I go off and be a lawyer? Well, I'm not personally connected to being a lawyer, and I know that there's a possibility of making a great living doing that. But is that something I feel particularly aligned to? No. So then it's like, well, and actually, I remember having this conversation with my wife Casey, and it's like, what can we do where we'll lay down at night and feel really good about what we're doing? And she said, well, why don't you build a fly fishing lodge? I'm going, yeah, yeah, that great idea. I've wanted to do that my entire life, but at the time it was COVID, and I was a tour manager at the time, and the touring industry had completely dissolved overnight, and there was no touring on planet Earth. So the funds were a little low, and starting a fly fishing lodge slash guest ranch resort was not in the financial plan. But there was there was something that really did strike a nerve for that, and she really kind of helped me explore that idea and figure out, well, if that's something you want to do, I think you can do it. Through the power of belief and right action, it actually did come together, and in a seemingly impossible way. But I don't think without the power of belief and some action sprinkled in there, there's no way.
Would you be willing to share, if you remember, once you got that clear that I'm going to take action toward this, what was the first thing that you did since you knew you couldn't do it all by yourself?
I had nothing. I didn't know anybody that owned a lodge. I didn't know anybody that was interested in building one. I was really going to have to start from scratch. And so to even try to pursue that was a little bit of a hurdle. It seemed like, nah, I don't think that one's going to come together. It may not be a good use of your time. And, but it was something that just, it had called to me forever. And, I had some flexibility in my schedule due to COVID, and, we're not touring anymore. So I thought, well, if there was ever time to hit the reset button, this would definitely be it. If there was ever a moment where you could pursue the dream, whatever that is, now is the time. And there was no question about that. And I thought, well, let's do it. So we ended up, we spent probably about a year building a business plan, and in that plan, again, right action, you just start with step one. Well, what's the first step and the second step, and you try to map these things out. And a few of those steps, well, maybe a lot of them are really achievable. And then you get to one that goes, that seems impossible. It is impossible. That's the way I looked at a couple of those things, and that's when I got to the point of, you should probably quit. You should quit. You should do something else. And that's when you've really got to close your eyes and take a deep breath and dig deep. And if your gut says you should keep going, then you gotta keep going. You can't really focus on the hurdles. I think you just keep pursuing whatever it is that you really feel aligned to, and eventually those things probably come together.
I love how you're leaning on this principle of right action, especially so much at key aspects or turning points of your story. Did you learn those things from somebody? How did they come into your life? Because they seem like they really are core principles for how you operate.
I think it really started out with a book that I had read, and again, I was under a period of just anxiety and stress, and at the time I was touring, and I was in such a stressful mindset. I couldn't really shake it loose, no matter what I did. It just would not go away. I didn't realize that I was creating that thought myself at the time. I learned that later after reading this book. It was almost just like a record on repeat. It was just the same stressful thoughts creeping in. And, I used to, getting home from the road, one of my favorite things to do was tie flies for fly fishing. And I had a record player there in my room, and I would tie flies and listen to my favorite record. And I remember one night being so stressed out about whatever it was that I was thinking, I can't even do my favorite thing to do and not feel this stress. And I remember thinking about that and looking over, and in the corner of my room was a stack of books. And I'd never at this point read a book under my own accord ever. But there was an orange book over there, and for whatever reason, I didn't recognize it, and two, I guess I didn't have anything better to do. But I ran over there and grabbed this book, and it was by Eckhart Tolle. It was called A New Earth. And my mom had given that to me. I'd had it for a few years, and I don't know that I ever even read the title of it. It was just, it had been a decoration in my room. But I read the back of it and thought, well, this seems surprisingly fitting for the situation I'm in. This seems like anything could help at this point. And so from the very first page on, it was just the catalyst of an enormous amount of relief. And now I've read that book, 6 or 7 times now, and I've given it to I don't know how many people. I've bought 10 different copies of it, and just continue to read it and really find so many fulfilling things that you know, every time I read it, I find a different angle of it that may be applicable to what the current situation is. So highly recommend that book. And it states, it really just kind of helped me get down to the essence and really believe in my gut and move towards things that really I felt connected to, and to discard some of the things like doubt and, any kind of negative emotion that might come up, which definitely happens. But that really helped me build the foundation of how to use my time wisely, and how to try to figure out what's important in life and that sort of thing. So really thankful for that.
You led us off in this discussion by mentioning how family is this most central value for you with your son and your marriage. And for a lot of people, I imagine that them having this grand vision of, the lodge, the fly fishing, changing location pretty dramatically, a couple thousand miles, and they might see that as directly conflicting with the importance of family. You were able to see them, it sounds like, as integrated the whole way, that these play together as part of the same picture. Could you talk about that process of how you saw it fit together?
Yeah, well, my wife has a lot to do with that, and just I think that's another thing that just is not really a chance happening. I think she's really supposed to be in my life, and she's very inspiring, and somebody that has a considerable amount of influence. But she's also somebody that I just really respect. She's so intelligent, and she's got such a wonderful work ethic that having her say, "Hey, I think you can do this." I went, "Really? Yeah, well, do anything you want." Well, okay, is that something you're into? And she just so happens to be just in love with the outdoors, and she was an outdoor guide. And it wasn't really a one-sided thing. It was something that she also wanted to be a part of, and she did play such a big role in just kind of getting this thing up and going. And with that, everything really fell together, and everybody that I needed any sort of validation or help from, it was there. All of those puzzle pieces just really fell into place beautifully.
As you think about the work that you've done, are there any common threads for you that sort of carry through all the time that you've just been doing in different ways?
That is something that's so funny that you say that, because I've been thinking about that so much here lately. And a lot of those things and how my life has gone is really owed to people that just gave me an opportunity. They didn't hand anything to me directly, but an opportunity was there. And I think the first one was out of high school. I grew up in Nashville, and I moved straight to Texas. And I knew that is what I was. There's no question. I'm going to Texas, and that's what I'm doing. I didn't exactly have an idea what I was going to do when I got there. I was going to go to school, But I really wanted a ranch job. And at that point, I had not worked on a ranch, but we had a bunch of cowboys in the family, and I was really closely connected to the cowboy lifestyle, but had never gotten the opportunity to really live it myself, like my cousins and other parts of the family did. But I got a taste of it a few times a year going down and visiting them. And it was always something that I was fascinated with and was just like, this is really right up my alley. So I knew I wanted a ranch job. And my brother's old roommate in college worked on this ranch outside of town. I didn't know anything about it, but I just knew he worked on a ranch, and his name was Jeremy Bridges. And I said, Jeremy, I saw him one night and said, hey, I'd love a ranch job. If there's ever an opening out there where you're at, I'd love a shot anyways. I know very little about horses and virtually nothing about cattle, but I can ride a horse okay, and I'd love the opportunity. And he called me a couple weeks later and he said, hey, we could use some help for a day, if you want to come out and help us work some cows. And so I drove out there and stayed for 6 years. So yeah, I never left. I was there for a good 6 years solid. I ended up moving out there and living on the property. The reason I mention that is Randy White was the foreman on that ranch, and he without him, and I can say that about a lot of people. It's not just Randy, but he was the first one that I can really go back and say this about. But without him, I have no earthly idea who I'd be. He's this cowboy from West Texas, and just so unbelievably skilled in what he does to the point where he's a master of it. And a lot of people don't really know how much skill goes into being a cowboy, but being a cowboy is not just one thing, it's a culmination of a lot of different things. And horsemanship is one of them. Knowing about the grass and the trees and the natural ecosystem is one of them, which is quite a complex little system there. And then cattle and livestock and all of that, it and then you combine that with just an unusual work ethic that's just the tiniest little insight on what being a cowboy is. And he was the absolute epitome of cowboy. And somehow I landed on his plate out there on that ranch, and I got to learn what real work ethic was and how to use your head. And never really been in that position before, but without him and that experience, I mean, I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I don't think I would have the same work ethic. And there was a lot of skills actually that transferred over from that experience, just hard skills that I use today. And we're a working cattle ranch over here too. And so that was such a valuable experience to me. But I would say the opportunities that other people have given is just been absolutely critical. And it started with him. I mean, he didn't have to keep me out there. There's a lot more skilled people he could have brought on for that position, but he took me in and taught me how to do it. And we were a great team for a really long time. So I owe a lot to Mr. Randy White.
Are there any common threads to that work ethic as you've seen it show up there, tour managing, and now?
Oh, absolutely. And really just kind of taking on the responsibility. I mean, when you're working on the ranch, there's a term called riding for the brand. And that really is blood, sweat, and tears. It does not matter what it is. Get in there and get it done. That's your job. That's what you're here to do. And so it's a real commitment, not just a verbal or contractual commitment, but you're committing to something with your heart, and that brings a whole new level of work ethic. And you've got to have a lot of integrity to follow through with that stuff, because there's going to be some really difficult times, come about where you might want to say, this is hard. Maybe I don't want to do this anymore. and and that certainly happened, but you keep your word, and you gotta put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And so riding for the brand has stuck with me forever, whether it's touring for an artist or, being out here, trying to build a guest ranch resort. When you commit to something and you say you're going to do something, then you do it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell me about a time, if one comes to mind, when you have felt yourself navigating a conflict between your own values in a situation? Sort of walk us
yeah,
through what comes to mind, what happened, and how you navigated that rub and resolved it, if you did.
boy, well that is also what a great timing for that question, because that really touches on riding for the brand and commitment. And kind of what we spoke about earlier, but when you really commit to something and you commit with your heart, and another opportunity comes along, it's really difficult to break that commitment. And an example of that was, I just started touring with Parker McCollum, and he gave me the opportunity to be his tour manager. He was just on such a rocket ship, going straight to the top, and still is. I mean, he's doing such big things. And I knew immediately. I had breakfast with his manager Enzo DiVincenzo and him, and I knew immediately. I was like, that's my guy. And he called me about 15 minutes later and said the exact same thing. He said, You're my guy. Let's go." And so I told him, I was like, "Hey," and he's from Texas, and he knows exactly what riding for the brand is. And I said, Man, I'm riding for the brand. Let's go do it." And we had a ball. Out of that, it wasn't too long after I got started that this bizarre opportunity to build this guest ranch just completely fell out of the sky right into my lap. And I was like, how is it that I land the very best job I've ever had and now I'm gonna quit? Boy, that was a real struggle, and not just from the professional aspect of it. There were some really great things about working for Parker, but mostly it was my relationship with him that was more important than any of the physical benefits. It was he's my friend. It was just absolutely gut-wrenching to go to him and say, "There's this opportunity that's come about, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to turn it down." And of course and I did have that conversation with him, and he was so supportive. But that was a real conflict of values, was that I had committed to him and his business with my heart, not just I'll sign on the dotted line and let's make it a business transaction, but I'd really committed with my heart to give him 200%. And now I'm going to go back on my word. I said I would do this and that and X, Y, and Z, and now I'm gonna quit. And that was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done. I struggled with it so badly, and without his support, I don't know how that would have worked out. But he was like, "Man, you have to go and do this. You can't sit around and wonder about it. Like, we'll be all right. You go do your thing." And so I'm really thankful for that. But that was a real conflict. I felt like I'd let him down, and he had thoughts otherwise, but that was the initial thing, was, man, I don't want to let him down. And so that's the most recent example of that anyways.
What a dilemma too, because you're navigating two dreams and literally having to look at trading one off for the other because they don't really coexist.
Yeah, it was tricky. It was really it was a tricky thing, but looking back on it, what a great problem to have, I guess, is leaving one thing that you really enjoy for another thing that you're really going to enjoy. So there was a little bit of beauty in the struggle there for sure.
And I hear again, you've multiple times mentioned the importance of other people at important junctures of your path. And it sounds like having that support from someone in a way that really supports you and your best interests, your fullest potential, is another thing that catapulted you at a transition.
Yeah, and I think realizing how much, I mean, I've had, we'd all love to stand up there and believe that we just did X, Y, and Z totally on our own. But if you really trace that path back, you will definitely find that there's people that gave you that opportunity and people that really helped build you up along the way. And after really putting that under the microscope, there's so many people that I look back and I'm like, wow, what a critical element of this happening was they did this or helped me or believed in me or gave me an opportunity. And every day that passes, I become more and more aware of that and try my very best to also help people as much as I possibly can. So you got to reciprocate, right?
Yeah. I shared in the introduction personal experience of mine with you that you're a very open person. You're willing to consider other perspectives. I've seen you change your mind in various circumstances in ways that it stands out enough that I'd call it uncommon among people. Are there things that you're either unwilling to be wrong about or any things that you're totally willing to be wrong about?
I can't really at the time name anything specific other than I'm not willing to sacrifice my integrity for anything. I don't care what it is. There is not enough gold in the world to sacrifice. I think integrity is probably one of the best foundations that people can build themselves or their actions on. It's something that I personally really look for in like hiring staff and things like that is not really skill set. Skill set is something, you can be taught X, Y, or Z. Probably can't teach you how to be a good person. So I think that if you're surrounding yourself with people with integrity, that's how you really put together a team. So yeah, I'm not willing to sacrifice my integrity. And I'm willing to be wrong on anything. I mean, nobody's perfect and we're all human and I'm wrong all the time. So without realizing that you're wrong, how could you possibly improve? And if you really want to improve, I think you need to be able to have a really unbiased set of opinions about yourself and be really open to your own actions and how those affect other people and the consideration of other people. And I think there's a lot of things that go into that. But yes, I'm definitely willing to be wrong, and it happens often.
I don't often quote anything from Jeff Bezos, but there is one thing on this front that he said that I read a few years ago, and it was something along the lines of people that are right most often are the people most willing to change their minds when they get new information. So
I
it's the opposite of, oh, I'm always right. It's like I actually realize how often I'm wrong, which means I'm increasing my chances of being right.
that's a really good way of putting it. And I really hope to I try to be in the room with nothing but people that are better than me. And I think that's the best way to just kind of throw yourself in the fire and try to rise to, whoever is around you and putting yourself in a room with people that have more experience or are better has been also a really valuable tool for me. So.
Is there anything that you understand about yourself now that you wouldn't have come to understand while living prior versions of your life?
That's a tough one. I mean, society really does place some confines on you sometimes if you let it. That it really can if you let it impart whatever that particular society is. It could be, a really small town and kind of the general consensus that the attitude over there. It could be just kind of the vibe of a whole city or state or whatever it is. The state of Texas, which my entire family is from, everybody's really proud to be from Texas, and that's a part of the Texas society. I mean, everybody in Texas, that's a huge theme over there. So maybe that's kind of just kind of a broad example of that. But the ability to live in a remote place does distill some of the confines of society down. It does kind of fall away. Being able to spend some time outside in nature is an unbelievable way to kind of get in touch with whoever it is that you really are. You don't have the TV reminding you that you should go out and buy this or that, or I think that comparison is the thief of joy. And if you're constantly surrounded by people, well, that's a pretty good opportunity to compare yourselves with them. But we live in a very remote area, and we spend a lot of time outside. And so the element of comparison is pretty small. And we don't watch TV anymore because our time is spent hiking outside at any free time that we get. And so I think just being outside is just really critical for everyone. And one example of that is we get a lot of high performing people over here that you can tell, I'll talk to them on the phone and I can tell that they're a high functioning person, could possibly be in a stressful job or situation. They really need to have a vacation. Like it's necessary. You guys really need to come out here and spend some time outside. And when they walk in the door, I can tell that there's a little bit of stress in there, that they're really dealing with some sort of situation. And then you get them outside on the river, and something about that just kind of washes all of that away. And I can't tell you how many times it's kind of an experiment now, but I'll give them about an hour or two and let them adjust to the new surroundings, right? We're out there fishing or whatever we're doing outside. I'll say, well, Mr. Smith, I'm curious. Have you thought one bit about your to-do list or anything going on at work? And all of a sudden they go, no. I'm like, nothing at all. And they're not it. Haven't given it one bit of thought. I'm like, all right, good. Now there's another notch for being in nature. So nature wins again. But it's such a beautiful thing to see people just kind of naturally leave their baggage from home at the door and be able to take a big deep breath and relax.
What a deeper purpose behind everything you're doing there that you just gave us a peek into.
Yeah, what an honor it is to provide people with those experiences. And just talking about fulfilling things. I mean, one of the big inspirations behind doing this was, but before we'd even decided on Guest Ranch, it was like, what are some of the most fulfilling core happenings or memories that I've ever had? I've packed a lot of life into my years, and I would say the most valuable things that I ever did was spending time with my granddad fly fishing in Colorado, or riding horses, and just outdoor things, fishing with my dad, and those were the things that I really felt steered by, or something that just created a passion or interest in things that I still am just as interested now as I'm almost 40, just as interested now as I was back when I was a kid. And those are my most core memories. And the most directing things that I think really ever happened to me was fishing with my granddad, and just doing things outside. And I've always had a love for that. And it was always a challenge trying to figure out how I was going to piece those together to be able to move out west and do that. It seemed like, again, just kind of an insurmountable challenge of how can I do this on a level that's sustainable for a family? But now that I'm able to provide those same core experiences for other people, that's as high of a goal as I could possibly want to do. It's amazing to watch a 13-year-old kid come over here from inner city Chicago that's never seen the mountains ever, and just their eyes are so big and they're just sponges for the environment. And we're out here where any given moment a moose could walk by the window, or a herd of elk will blow by on the hillside, or an eagle swoop down and grab a fish. I mean, it really is it's an unbelievable environment in western Montana. And to see young people especially come over and just really be out of their element, and all of a sudden they've been thrown into this magical land of the outdoors that they've never been exposed to before. That is just the greatest feeling in the world, and it'll never get old, ever, ever, ever.
I know that most of your time you're not super connected to the rest of the world, so to speak, but I have a favorite fictional scenario I like to pose to guests. If you had the attention of the entire world, like 8 billion of us, for a short period of time, and you got to advocate for one personal value that you think everyone would be better off if they adopted it more centrally for themselves, what do you think you would use that time to advocate for? And what would your sales pitch about it be?
Oh, without question, it would be help your brother and sister, help each other. That's we're not all born with you know every ability or funding to go out there and do it. And when I look at any accomplishment I feel like I've ever made, it traces back to somebody helped me in some way get there. And so I think if we all spent some more time trying to help somebody else other than ourselves, I think the reciprocation from that is tenfold rather than just spending every waking moment like, how can I get more for me, more me, more me, more me? I think that just being able to, in theory, rely on every single other human, what an interesting and amazing world that would be if we could just rely on everybody to help us. So that's what I would do.
I love so much that you walk the walk with that, because I could hear how that's woven through each of the chapters of your life with all the
It's
things you do.
undeniable. It's not really like a theory. It is how my life has played out, and it's something that I can't tell you. The level of appreciation, there are no words for that. And also, when somebody helps you, you feel the feeling of gratitude, and the feeling of gratitude is awesome. Just feeling gratitude is such a good feeling. So I think there's a lot of byproducts that are amazing from helping other people and then also receiving their help too. And but yeah, I really just give the credit to all the people that have really helped me or given me opportunities along the way. So
Thank you. If people want to connect with you, or if they want to learn more about the Meadows at Rock Creek, where would you point them to?
we've got the website is themeadowsonrockcreek.com. That's probably the best way. And you can shoot an email to info@themeadowsonrockcreek.com anytime. And that'll go to either myself or one of our team members. And we'd love to talk to you about coming to Western Montana.
That's so fantastic. I'm really looking forward to getting up there at some point. We're overdue for sure.
Well, come on up here, Mark. We'd love to have you.
That's all for this episode of Because This Matters. I believe that these are conversations that matter. If something from this conversation spoke to you, please consider sharing it with someone. Maybe take a moment to like, rate, follow, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. You can learn more about my work as a coach and speaker at markpoise.com. Until next time, remember that a life aligned with values is a fulfilled one.